Hello and welcome. This presentation is a role play to help NC State personnel understand how to provide programs and activities for minors and be in compliance with Regulation 01.25.18.
Hey Stacy, this year I'll be interacting with prospective NC State students who are currently in high school and many of them are under the age of 18. I'm also planning to have an intern working in my office who is a minor, and I'm working with my department to host a workshop for middle school students. What do I need to do to be in compliance with the regulation for programs and activities with minors?
I'm glad you asked. All employees need to be aware of their responsibilities and boundaries in working with minors. I see too many cases about individuals in educational settings acting inappropriately with youth, and all of us at NC State need to work collectively to help ensure we do not allow the minors in our care to be harmed in any way. With this in mind, the first step is to determine if your program or activity falls under the regulation. The regulation applies to programs and activities in which the university is knowingly supervising the minor participants, providing online programs for minors through a registration process, or knowingly allowing a third party to use university property for the purpose of operating a program or activity primarily serving or including minors. Let's talk about in-person programs and activities. These fall under the regulation when NC State individuals are providing direct supervision for the care, custody, or control of the minors while they are participating in the NC State activities. If the direct supervision is provided by a parent, guardian, teacher, chaperone, or other outside entity, then the program does not fall under the regulation. Do you have any questions about the in-person programs?
No, that makes sense.
For online programs and activities, these fall under the regulation when NC State individuals are collecting registration information for the minors, such as their name, address, phone number, email. If nobody from NC State is collecting this personally identifiable information on the minors, then the program does not fall under the regulation. If your program or activity does not fall under the regulation, there are no compliance requirements to fulfill, but we always recommend referencing the best practices for working with minors. The best practices can be found on our website, and I'm going to go there right now. You can see this is our Protection of Minors website, and the first thing under best practices is that Program Coordinator Handbook. This is a comprehensive document that covers a wide range of risk management considerations for programs with minors, and we recommend taking a look at that regardless if your program falls under the reg. There's also some great guidance on electronic communication with minors. You'll see the required supervision ratios. Those are specifically for in-person programs. There's also our training. Now, this training is the same training that is automatically assigned when you register a program in Reporter. And this is assigned to all of the individuals working in your program or volunteering in your program. But it's also publicly available, so please take advantage of it. And then you'll see the university resources. Those university resources include all of the forms you may need for a program, whether you are an individual, a faculty member, or a camp or a program. For example, you'll find sample liability waivers, emergency contact forms, medical and insurance forms, everything that you would need to run your program. Okay, now let's head back to our presentation. And let's look at the actual regulation. So let's say that you actually have a program or activity that does fall under the regulation. It will need to be registered with the Office of Youth Programs and Compliance, and the requirements of the regulation must be met. These are the requirements. First, you have to gain approval from the Vice Chancellor or Dean or their designee with supervisory authority over your program. It's best to get this approval in an email so that you can have a specific date of that approval, because that date will then need to be entered into your minors compliance form in Reporter. You'll register with the Youth Programs Office, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. You're going to collect written agreements from the parents or guardians of the minors. This is where you must collect the emergency contact information, and you also must have a liability waiver. And again, those samples are on our website. If you're working with a third party who's renting your space at NC State, they must sign a facilities use agreement or other university approved agreement. The individuals who are working or volunteering in your program and who will have either direct access to the minors, providing the care, custody, or control for an in-person program or for an online program, these are the individuals who would have access to the registration information or personally identifiable information of the minors. These people need criminal background checks done initially upon hire, as well as every 3 years. And the dates of those checks will get entered into the minors compliance form and reporter. They also will need appropriate reference checks. That really depends on their role and how well you know those individuals, but we can certainly provide some guidance on reference checks if you reach out to our office. The university record checks are done automatically when we see the individuals listed on the minors compliance form and reporter. And those university record checks go against things like the student conduct record or OIED records. And then if and those individuals would be driving minors in your program, when you request the criminal background check, just indicate they will be driving, and then that will also check their DMV record to make sure that they're a safe driver. The training, as we talked about, is automatically assigned in Reporter once you put the individual's names and contact information in there. And then everybody is responsible for the conduct of programs. You must follow the best practices, and there's also a personal boundaries document that each covered individual will need to agree to, and that's part of the training. And that is also linked on our best practices site. It is a state of North Carolina law that any adult in the state who knows of any type of child abuse must report it. And so if you notice abuse or hear a disclosure of abuse, it must be reported to the Division of Social Services for the county in which the minor is found or in which they reside. Now, if it is a violent offense or a sexual offense, that also must be reported to the local police. That might be the NC State Police, or it may be police local to the county in which your program is. And you should also notify the Office of Youth Programs and Compliance. And of course, you are welcome to notify us first because we can walk you through those other steps. If it is something that requires immediate attention, always contact the police. That's the first point of contact. Let's take a look at our next slide. So we really need to determine what and how to register.
So this was one of my questions, Stacy, is, how to register my program. Some are time limited and some may happen throughout the year.
All activities and programs that fall within the scope of the regulation need to be registered. So think through the best way to complete the minors regulation compliance form to encompass your activities and the NC State personnel involved. If the same staff and volunteers will be involved in multiple activities, you may be able to include all activities in one form. Refer to the reporter help documentation for guidance in registering your program. The help documentation is in the minors compliance registration form, and you'll see that when you log into Reporter. Continuous programs need to be registered once annually. In-person time-limited programs and activities should be registered as such. We need a record of the people working each program, those participating in each program, such as a roster of the minors, as well as the on-campus locations of the program so that we can provide support in case of an emergency situation and respond appropriately if there is an incident. And of course, if it's an online program, there's a space to indicate that as well. The form must include the people who represent NC State as covered individuals. These are the people who need the background checks within the last 3 years and who will be assigned to the annual required training course. Refer to the regulation for the definition of covered individual.
This seems like a lot of steps. How long will this take?
It is advised to start the minors regulation compliance form about 60 days in advance so that you can see what information is needed and plan accordingly. However, the form is not required to be submitted until 10 days prior to the start date of your program or activity. You can start the form and save it as a draft as many times as you need to. It's really your form, and you can add other people in your area as editors. It's easy to get started. So first you'll just go to reporter.ncsu.edu. You'll see your name in the top right corner, and when you click on it, there's a down arrow. So go to the Protection of Minors Compliance dashboard, and then you create your compliance form, or if you've already started one, you'll be able to go through these same steps to edit your existing form. There's not a wrong way to complete the form. If anything is missing, the Youth Programs Office will let you know and you'll have the opportunity to fix it. The form can be edited and submitted for review as many times as needed prior to the start date of your program. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time. We just need you to get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Stacy. I'll go ahead and get started.
It was really great talking with you today. Please feel free to reach out with any additional questions. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best with your program. And as you can see, my email address is protectionofminors@ncsu.edu.